We have been talking about ratios, and a special kind of ratio is what we call a rate. So today we are going to talk about rates and what a unit rate is. So we're just going to jump right into a problem because I think it's the best way to explain a rate. Okay? So the first question here says Mr. Rosenbaum can eat 14 pieces of pizza in 2 hours. Okay? So when I think of rate, I think about doing something and how fast I can do something. Okay? So a rate specifically compares two different quantities. Okay? Ratio compares quantities. Okay? A rate is when you compare two different quantities. So in this case, our rate, what is our rate? Our rate is pieces and hours. Okay, we're going to compare pieces and hours. So it says Mr. Rosenbaum can eat 14 pieces of pizza in 2 hours. So our rate would be 14 pieces for every 2 hours. Okay, so we would write the ratio 14 to 2, okay, or 14 pieces per 2 hours. Okay, and I like to think of this line right here as the per line. Okay, we usually say that 14 pieces per 2 hours. Okay, so this is our rate. Something else that we talk about is what we call a unit rate. And a unit rate is when we get the rate, so there's a 1 in the denominator. Okay, so there's a 1 in the denominator. So how do we do that? Well, we'll have the same labels. Okay, the labels won't change. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite the labels. So pieces per hour. And since we're going to get a 1 in the denominator, I know that this is going to be a 1. Okay, now how do we get a 1 in the denominator? What we do is we simply take 14 divided by 2. Okay, so 14 divided by 2 is 7. So it would be 7 pieces per 1 hour. And that would be our unit rate. Okay, so our rate is what's given to us in the problem, and our unit rate is when we get the denominator in the rate to 1. Okay, unit means 1. Okay, if we have a unit fraction, when we talked about fractions at the way beginning of the year, we had proper fraction, we had improper fraction. Okay, something else that we talked about though was a unit fraction, and a unit fraction was when there was a 1 in the numerator. Okay, the reason it was called a unit fraction is because it was because of that 1 in the numerator. Okay, well in this case our unit rate is a unit rate because there's a 1 in the denominator. Okay, how did we get the 1? We took the original rate and divided it. 14 divided by 2 gave us 7 pieces per 1 hour. Okay, let's try the next one. Okay. Matt can jog 12 miles in 3 hours. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the rate. Okay, the rate. The rate is 12 miles per 3 hours. Okay, 12 miles per 3 hours. And you're going to have to write this when we practice, so we got to make sure that you can write it correctly. The unit rate, okay, the unit rate is when we take 12 divided by 3, which is 4. The reason we just divide it is because that gets a 1 in the bottom, or in the denominator. And then our label stays the same, miles per hour. So our unit rate is 4 miles per hour. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, it says Tim can wash 95 cars. Let's see. It says Tim can wash 95 cars in 5 days. So my rate is 95 cars per 5 days Okay, my unit rate, we take 95 divided by 5, so I'm going to do that on the side. I get 19, so 19 cars per 1 day. Okay? Tim can wash 95 cars in 5 days, that was our rate. In 1 day, he washed 19 cars per day. Okay, so 95 cars per 5 days is our rate. To get our unit rate, we divide it, and our unit rate would be 19 cars for 1 day. Okay, that is a rate and a unit rate. Okay, now the last thing I want to talk about is what we call a unit price, and it's the exact same thing as a unit rate, except that there's money involved. So let's see if we can find one here. Okay, so let's see. At Hy-Vee, 7 apples cost $4.55. Okay, so the rate, and let's not worry about the bottom part of this yet. Let's not worry about that. Okay, at Hy-Vee, 7 apples cost $4.55. The rate is $4.55 per 7 apples. Now, one thing I'm going to say is that whenever you have money, I always put money in the top of the rate unless specifically it asks per dollar. If it wants to know how much per dollar, it goes in the bottom. Otherwise, typically money goes on the top. So in this case, we're doing it per apple. Okay, it just depends on the problem that it's asking. So if the answer needs to be it needs to know per dollar, dollars goes on the bottom. Otherwise, money typically goes on the top. Okay, so our rate is $4.50 per 7 apples. Now, what is the unit rate? Okay, the unit rate, we take $4.55 divided by 7. So we get 65 cents per 1 apple. That would be our unit rate. But since this has money in it, since this has money in it, we can cross out rate and put price. Okay? This is our price, unit price. Okay? This is our unit price. So, we talked about a rate. A rate is what's given. In this case, it was $4.55 per 7 apples. The second thing is the rate, the unit rate. We get a unit rate when we get the denominator in the rate to 1. The way we do that is we take $4.55 divided by 7. And that should make sense because this per line that we talked about is also known as division. Okay, we use that for division, so you know you should divide. Okay, and then a unit price is a unit rate, except when you're talking about money. Okay, an example of a unit price would be if you go to the store, if you go to Walmart, okay, and you look at the prices, they always have a unit price to tell you which is cheaper. So let's say you're going to buy a bag of M&Ms, okay, and there's 2 sizes of M&Ms. Well, if you look on the bottom of the sticker, it'll say 16 cents per ounce, and then another bag will say 24 cents per ounce. Okay, well, the per ounce value is actually cheaper. So you wouldn't buy, if you're going to buy the same amount of M&Ms, you would want the one that's cheaper per ounce. That's why there's a unit price. Okay, so rates, unit rates, and unit prices. You need to know what they are, and you need to know the difference between them.